I thought I knew everything about my straight roommate, but one night while I was fast asleep, he did something that completely shattered that belief. When I woke up, I couldn't believe what I saw. What happened next was so exciting that it really turned my whole world upside down. It started out like any other night. I had just finished a long day of classes and work, exhausted and ready to crash in bed. Nothing out of the ordinary, at least that's what I thought. I've been living with my roommate Chris for over a year now, and he's straight. He has always been straight, as far as I knew. In fact, when I first moved in, I didn't think much of it. We were both just looking for a place to crash, just two college guys trying to make it in the world. Chris and I hit it off right away. We'd hang out, grab beers, talk about life, but it never really went beyond that. He was always kind of a jock, big and athletic, always surrounded by girls, and I was the quieter one, more into books and gaming. It was easy to fall into a comfortable routine with him. He was just that easygoing, and I didn't really mind the differences between us. I mean, it wasn't like I had a reason to think things could ever go beyond what they were. He had his girlfriend, and I kept my attraction to him hidden. I didn't think he'd ever see me that way. Besides, he was straight. But things started to change about 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure when it started. Maybe it was a gradual shift, or maybe I'm just now realizing it, but something was different. We'd still hang out, still talk about whatever was on our minds, but there were these little moments, little glances, brief touches, nothing overt, nothing that could be easily noticed. But I noticed, and I tried to ignore it. I mean, I told myself I was reading too much into it, that maybe I was just imagining things. It didn't help that Chris had started acting a little different around me, more playful, more flirtatious, like he was trying to get a reaction out of me. I remember one night in particular. Chris and I had spent the evening watching some ridiculous action movie, both of us sprawled on the couch, sharing a bag of chips. He had been unusually touchy, nudging my arm, laughing a little too close. But even then, I pushed it aside. It didn't mean anything, right? Just Chris being himself. But then that night, the night it happened, the one that stuck with me, everything changed. It was after a night out. We had gone to a party just to unwind, nothing serious. I'd had a few drinks, but nothing too crazy. It wasn't like I was hammered. We came back to the apartment late, and I remember feeling tired, my body sore from standing for hours and dancing in a crowded space. Chris had been quiet for most of the walk home, but when we got inside, he turned to me with a weird smile, not his usual goofy grin, but something more intense. "You good?" he asked, his voice a little softer than usual. I nodded, shrugging off my jacket as I headed for my room. I didn't think much of it. Just tired, going to crash. "All right, bro," he said, dragging his feet. Then, as I was about to close my door, I heard him speak again. "Hey, you mind if I crash in here tonight?" "I don't know, I just don't feel like sleeping alone." I turned to face him, raising an eyebrow. "Huh?" He scratched the back of his neck, looking a little awkward. "I mean, I know it's weird, but I'm kind of not feeling it. Just can we hang for a bit?" At this point, my mind was racing. What was going on? We had shared a couch plenty of times, but this felt different. Still, I didn't want to make it weird, so I said, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Chris settled into the bed next to me, and I remember how he adjusted his pillow. For a few minutes, we didn't say anything, but then he shifted slightly closer to me, his body warmth spreading across the bed. That's when I felt it, the tension. Something that hadn't been there before, something I couldn't explain. I tried to ignore it, trying to focus on the dull hum of the city outside, but Chris's presence was overwhelming. There was no way to brush it off anymore, something was definitely going on, and I was starting to wonder if he felt it too. The next thing I knew, my eyes fluttered closed, and I was drifting off into a sleep that I didn't realize was about to change everything. Then I woke up in the middle of the night, not from a noise or anything specific, but from a feeling, a sense that something wasn't quite right. The room was dark, save for the faint glow of streetlights peeking through the blinds. My body felt warm, but not in a comfortable way. There was a strange pressure on the bed beside me. I turned my head, blinking to adjust to the dim light. That's when I noticed it. Chris was still there, but he wasn't just lying beside me anymore. No, he was closer, a lot closer. I could feel his breath against the back of my neck, warm and steady. His arm was draped across my body, his hand resting lightly on my chest. For a brief moment, I froze. My heart began to race in my chest as I tried to make sense of what was happening. What was he doing? I could have sworn I'd felt his body shift against mine while I was asleep, but I hadn't woken up, at least not until now. His breath was steady, like he was still sleeping, but that closeness was impossible to ignore. I carefully tried to move, but Chris's arm tightened around me, pulling me in closer. For a second, I wondered if this was a mistake. Maybe he didn't realize how close we were. Maybe he was just drunk and confused. But then I felt something else, something hard pressing against my back. A sudden wave of realization hit me, and I couldn't suppress the breath that escaped my lips. My heart hammered in my chest, there was no mistaking it, he was aroused. Panic surged through me, but at the same time, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I had no idea what to do. Was I supposed to say something? Should I move away, or was I overthinking things? Maybe this was just an accident, right? Maybe I was imagining things. But then, just as quick, panic set in. Chris shifted again, his face nuzzling the back of my neck. His lips brushed against my skin in a soft, almost tender gesture. I could feel his breath on me, his body now pressed so close to mine that it was impossible to ignore the undeniable chemistry building between us. What the hell is going on? I thought, my mind racing. Chris was acting like this, but how could this be happening? Was he just playing around? Was this some weird joke? But then he whispered, and his voice was so low, so quiet that I almost didn't catch it. Are you awake? I barely nodded, trying to control the pounding of my heart. His hand shifted on my chest, fingers grazing lightly over my skin, and I couldn't help but tense up. The way his touch lingered felt too intentional. I don't know why I'm doing this. Chris's voice was shaky now, filled with an uncertainty I wasn't used to hearing from him. He paused for a second as if considering his next words. My mind was screaming at me to move, to get out of this situation before it escalated further, but something held me there, a mix of confusion, desire, and uncertainty. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear whatever he was about to say, but I was already too far in. Chris, I said softly, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to remain calm. He didn't pull away, didn't apologize, just tightened his grip on me ever so slightly. His lips brushed my neck again, and this time I could feel the heat of his breath more intensely, as if he were testing the waters, unsure whether I would pull away. I don't know what's happening, but I need to know something, Chris said, his voice barely a whisper. I could feel the tension in his words, like he was fighting with something inside himself. What is it? I asked, even though I could feel my own breath getting caught in my throat. The tension between us was electric now. His hand slid down my chest, dangerously close to where my body responded without thinking. I could feel every inch of him against me, and I didn't know whether to pull away or let it happen. I don't know if I can stop myself, he confessed, his voice ragged. I'm not supposed to feel this way. I can't, but I want to. My entire body froze. Chris was confessing something, but what was he talking about? His feelings for me, or was he just confused, drunk, and caught up in the moment? Before I could say anything, Chris's lips were suddenly against mine, soft, unsure, but undeniably there. And that was it. I couldn't push him away. I didn't know how to. His kiss was tentative at first, as if he were waiting for me to stop him, but I didn't. I couldn't. The warmth of his body, the way his lips moved against mine, it felt too real to be a mistake. I could feel the confusion, the turmoil, the hesitation in his kiss, but also a sense of longing. It was clear that he didn't know what he was doing, didn't know what was happening between us, but there was no denying it anymore. He wanted this, and I didn't know what to do. But what I didn't realize was that this was only the beginning. At the moment, I could feel Chris's kiss deepening, his hand now gently cupping the side of my face as if he were trying to pull me closer into him. His body was pressed so tightly against mine that I could feel every breath he took, every movement of his chest. My mind was racing, a whirlwind of confusion and desire, but for some reason, I couldn't stop myself from responding. My hand moved instinctively, finding its way to his chest, feeling the heat of his skin beneath the fabric of his shirt. His heart was pounding just as fast as mine, and for a split second, I wondered if he was just as lost in this moment as I was, or was this all just a mistake? But before I could process what was happening, Chris broke the kiss, pulling away slightly. His forehead rested against mine, and I could hear the ragged breaths escaping from his lips. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. I don't know what I'm doing. I shouldn't be doing this. His words only left me more confused. Was he sorry for kissing me, or was he apologizing for something deeper? I could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle to reconcile what had just happened with the image of himself as the straight guy he always thought he was. Chris, you don't have to apologize, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The words felt like they just slipped out, but I meant them. I didn't want him to pull away from me. I didn't want to pull away. I wanted to know what this was, what it could be, but I didn't know how to make sense of it. He shook his head, his hand running through his hair, clearly frustrated with himself. "But I do," he said, his voice quieter now, almost as if he were trying to convince himself. "I've never felt this way before. I never thought I would. I didn't mean for this to happen, but it's like I can't control myself. I can't stop." He trailed off, and I could see the guilt in his eyes, but beneath it, I saw something else, something raw, something honest. He didn't know how to make sense of his own feelings, and to be honest, neither did I. I reached out and placed a hand on his arm, gently stopping his frantic movements. "Chris," I said softly, looking directly into his eyes, "you don't have to figure this out right now. We don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with, but I don't think you should apologize for what you're feeling." His gaze flickered between my eyes and my lips, the tension palpable in the air between us. "But I don't know what this means," he confessed, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "I've always thought I was straight. It's not supposed to happen. It doesn't make sense." I smiled a little, trying to ease his tension, though my own heart was still racing. Maybe it doesn't have to make sense right now. Maybe it's just something that's happening, and we can figure it out together. No pressure. He swallowed hard, and for a moment, I thought he might pull away again, but then he sighed, and a soft laugh escaped his lips, nervous but real. "Now how to make me feel better." "Don't." I chuckled softly, the tension in the room easing just a bit. For a few moments, we sat there in silence, just breathing, trying to process what had just happened. I couldn't deny that I was still confused. Was this a one-time thing? Was he just experimenting, or was this something deeper that neither of us understood? But as the silence stretched on, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of calm, as if for the first time in a long while, things didn't have to be figured out all at once. "I think," Chris began again, his voice quieter now. "I just need to know that I'm not going crazy. I don't want to mess things up between us. You know I've never been this close to another guy, and I don't know what that means about me." "I get it," I replied gently, squeezing his hand. "But you're not crazy, Chris. It's okay. Whatever this is, we can take it slow. I'm here." He nodded slowly, his eyes closing for a brief second as he let out a slow breath. "Yeah, okay." He didn't say anything more, but the way he looked at me, still uncertain but with something softer in his gaze, told me that he was processing it all in his own way. I wanted to reach out again, to kiss him, to explore whatever this feeling was between us, but I could tell he needed time to sort through his emotions, to understand what it all meant. And as much as I wanted to move forward, I also knew that I couldn't force him into something he wasn't ready for. Instead, I just lay there beside him, letting the stillness fill the space between us. The night wasn't over, and neither was this strange, unexpected chapter in our lives. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for sure: things would never be the same between us again. And what happened next was something I could never have imagined. The days after that night were a blur of confusion and tension. Though neither of us spoke about it directly, I could feel the unspoken words hanging in the air between us. Yet we both avoided bringing up what had happened. It was as if we were pretending that everything was fine, that things hadn't changed. But in reality, nothing felt the same. Chris seemed distant, not in a cold way, but in a way that suggested he was still grappling with the complexity of what had unfolded between us. His laughter felt forced, and though he was still the same guy I'd lived with for the past few months, there was something different about the way he looked at me. It wasn't a bad thing, just new. I, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about that kiss. It was seared into my memory, every detail clear in my mind, the warmth of his lips, the softness of his touch, the tension in his body. It had been electric in a way I couldn't explain. And though I tried to convince myself that it was just a moment of weakness for him, part of me hoped it wasn't. But then there was the question that kept creeping in: what now? Every time I saw Chris, I wondered if he was going to pull away, avoid me, or even worse, act like nothing had happened. Sometimes I couldn't help but wonder if he was just trying to figure out what this all meant, if he even wanted to try. A few nights later, I found myself sitting in the living room, flipping through channels but barely paying attention. My mind kept drifting back to Chris, to that kiss, to the silence that had stretched between us ever since. I wasn't sure what to do, but I knew one thing: I couldn't stand the distance any longer. That's when I heard the familiar sound of his footsteps coming down the hallway, soft but purposeful. He appeared in the doorway, his face hesitant, as if he was unsure of whether or not he should be standing there. "Hey," he said, his voice quieter than usual. Got a minute? I sat up straight, suddenly aware of the space between us. Of course, I replied, my heart rate quickening. Was this it? Was he finally going to talk about everything? He walked in slowly, taking a seat on the couch next to me. The space between us was small, but it felt like an ocean. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was almost unbearable. Finally, Chris cleared his throat. I've been thinking about everything, about what happened, about you and me. I swallowed, trying to steady my own breath. Yeah? He glanced over at me, his eyes uncertain but searching. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like I've been walking around in a fog since that night. It's like I'm not sure who I am anymore. I nodded, trying to understand where he was coming from. I get it, I said, my voice softer now. This is confusing. It's okay to be unsure. We don't have to figure it all out right away. Chris ran a hand through his hair, his fingers trembling slightly. But what if I don't want to just forget about it? What if I don't want to push this away? What if I want to figure it out with you? The words hit me like a punch to the chest, and I couldn't help but look at him, really look at him. His face was open now, vulnerable, something I wasn't used to seeing in him. I could see the honesty in his eyes, the desire to make sense of something that didn't have a clear answer. My heart raced as I processed what he was saying. He wasn't just apologizing, he wasn't just avoiding me. He wanted to explore whatever this was, whatever had been happening between us. I started, but my voice caught in my throat. I wasn't sure what to say. What if this was just a phase for him? What if he changed his mind later? But I couldn't deny the pull I felt toward him. Chris, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I've been thinking about this too, a lot. And I'm not going to pretend that it's easy or that I have all the answers, but I don't want to just ignore what's happening. I don't want to pretend like it didn't matter. Chris's eyes softened, and he leaned in slightly, his gaze fixed on mine. So you don't think I'm crazy? I shook my head, a small smile tugging at my lips. Not at all. Honestly, I think we're both in uncharted territory here, but I think it's worth exploring. For the first time in days. I saw a small flicker of relief in Chris's eyes. He exhaled sharply, like he had been holding his breath. You don't know how much I needed to hear that. I didn't know what would happen next or where this would take us, but I felt a surge of hope. Maybe we were both stepping into something unknown, but for the first time in a while, I wasn't afraid. There was something about him, about us, that felt like it could turn into something real. He shifted closer to me, his hand resting lightly on the space between us. There was a moment of hesitation, as if he was waiting for my response, my approval. I didn't need to say anything, I just leaned in, closing the distance between us. When our lips met again, it was different this time. There was no uncertainty, no confusion, just the promise of something new, something we were both willing to explore together. His lips moved from my neck back to mine, and the kiss was so intense. Then it happened. He turned me around, and we did the thing. In that moment, I lost myself completely, surrendering to the pleasure and letting go of everything else, giving in to the inevitable. When we finally pulled back, the world seemed to stand still for a moment. Chris's eyes were wide, as if he was still processing everything that had just happened. I could feel my own pulse racing, and I had to bite my lip to keep my nerves in check. That felt? Chris started, his voice low, almost uncertain. I didn't expect that. I laughed, though it was more out of nervousness than humor. Yeah, me neither. But there was something about the way he was looking at me now, like he was seeing me in a new light. It was like the walls that had been up between us for so long had finally come down, even if just a little. I don't know what to do with this, Chris admitted, his voice quiet but honest. I mean, I've never felt this way before, not about a guy at least. I'm trying to make sense of it all. I nodded slowly, feeling the same sense of confusion and curiosity. It's okay to not have it all figured out. I don't know what this is either, but I don't think that has to be a bad thing. We can take it slow, we don't need to rush into anything. He seemed to relax a little, like he was hearing me, understanding that we didn't need to put pressure on ourselves to define what was happening between us right away. For the first time since that night, I felt like we were both on the same page. Chris ran a hand through his hair, sighing as he leaned back against the couch. I guess that's the thing, right? We don't have to have all the answers. I just know that I want to see where this goes. I want to figure this out with you. The sincerity in his voice made my heart flutter. There was no uncertainty in what he was saying now, he wasn't hesitant or scared. He was just open, and I realized that for the first time in a long while, I was too. I want that too, I said, my voice soft but steady. I don't know what's going to happen next, but but I know I don't want to lose whatever this is between us. He curved into a small smile and nodded. Yeah, me neither. So we just keep going, right? No pressure, no rush. I smiled back, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. Yeah, we take it one step at a time. The silence that followed felt different now, not awkward or tense, but comfortable. It wasn't the kind of silence that needed to be filled with words. It was the kind that existed between two people who were starting to understand each other in a way that was new and exciting. After a while, Chris stood up and stretched, a playful grin appearing on his face. Well, since we're taking things slow, I think I'm going to hit the sack. It's been a long day. I laughed softly. Yeah, me too. I'm pretty tired. But before he turned to leave the room, he paused, looking over at me with a slightly mischievous glint in his eyes. Good night, by the way. I raised an eyebrow, wondering where this was going. Good night? That's it? Chris chuckled and leaned against the door frame. I'm just making sure you're not going to overthink things while you're lying in bed. I know that's your go-to move. I rolled my eyes but couldn't help the smile that spread across my face. You're right about that, but you don't have to worry. I think I've got enough to keep me occupied tonight. His smile softened, and he nodded. Good. Sleep well. With that, he walked out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. But for the first time in a while, I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't lying in bed wondering what the future held. All I could focus on was the fact that we'd taken that first step together, and even though everything was still uncertain, I had a feeling that it was going to be okay. As I lay there, staring up at the ceiling, I expected my mind to spiral like it always did, replaying conversations, dissecting every glance, every word. But tonight, there was no frantic overthinking, no endless loops of doubt. There was just the quiet hum of something new, something real. I turned onto my side, my phone screen glowing faintly on the nightstand. A message popped up from Chris. Still awake? I smirked, shaking my head. I could picture him in his room, lying in bed, phone in hand, probably fidgeting the way he did when he was nervous. Told you I wasn't overthinking, I texted back. A few seconds passed before my phone buzzed again. Good. Just wanted to make sure. I hesitated before replying. You okay? This time, he took longer to respond. The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, his message came through. I don't know how to do this. I stared at the words for a moment, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Neither do I. After a brief pause, another message followed, but you're not freaking out. I thought about that. Was I? If this had happened even a few weeks ago, maybe. But now, with the weight of our conversation still lingering in the air, with the way he'd looked at me before leaving my room, I thought, no, I'm not. Almost instantly, he replied, that makes one of us. I exhaled slowly. I could hear it in his words. Uncertainty, the fear of stepping into something uncharted. I didn't blame him, this was new for both of us. But for Chris, it was something he'd never even considered until now. He was trying to figure it out in real time. I don't expect you to have it all figured out tonight, I typed. We'll take it one step at a time. No pressure, just be honest with me. His response came quickly. I can do that. I smiled, my chest tightening in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Then, just as I was about to set my phone down, another message popped up. Can I come back? My breath hitched. I stared at the words for a second longer than necessary, then sat up and turned toward the door. A few moments later, there was a soft knock. I didn't say anything, I just got up and opened it. Chris stood there, looking like he wasn't sure if this was a mistake or not. His hair was a little messy, and his hoodie hung loosely on his frame. He was gripping the hem of it like his hands needed something to do. Hey, he said quietly. Hey. Neither of us moved. We just stood there, staring, breathing in the space between us. Finally, Chris ran a hand through his hair and let out a breath. I don't know why I came back. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts right now. I nodded, stepping aside. Come in. He hesitated, then walked past me, heading straight for my bed like it was second nature. He sat down on the edge, staring at his hands. I closed the door and leaned against it, watching him. You ever have that feeling where something huge happens and it doesn't hit you until hours later? He asked. Yeah, I said, sitting down next to him. That's what's happening now. Chris nodded, exhaling slowly. I don't even know what this means for me, for us, and that scares me. I nudged his knee with mine. That's okay. We don't have to figure it out tonight. But we both know something changed, and that's real, even if we don't have the words for it yet. Chris looked over at me then, and for the first time, I saw something settle in his expression, like the chaos in his head had quieted, even if just a little. He nodded. One step at a time. I smiled. One step at a time. A beat of silence, then without thinking too much about it, I reached for his hand. Not in a dramatic way, just a touch, a reminder. He flinched just slightly but didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers curled around mine like he was testing the feeling of it, and then he exhaled, his shoulders finally relaxing. We sat like that for a while, not saying anything, just breathing, existing, letting the weight of everything settle around us. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Neither was he. But it leaves me with a question. What do you think of all this? Should I feel bad about what happened? What would you do if this happened to you? I'm curious to hear what you would have done and what you think of my situation. Let me know in the comments below.